Arvind, I'll request you to summarize the symposium and invite Dr. Pathuri for his observations overall on the symposium. Thank you.
Thank you, Meghji. It's my pleasant duty now to summarize this total feast of a symposium. We began with Sri Lalita ji and Raghava ji striking a very modest note by citing Jayanta Bhatta, saying that there's nothing new we can say, but it can be presented in a novel way. And what a refreshing and concise manner they presented the introduction to Chandas. Maharshi Panini is credited with bringing all of Vyakarna into a cow's footprint, Goshpada, and their presentation today did that for us, covering Matra, Karshana, Vritta, and Akshara meters, Akshara Jati meters. And one thing which this presentation really helped us was to cross this chasm or gap or strong yati, if we may call it, between theory and practice. So we got to hear how letters off a page can sound different when they are sung with this very foot-tapping Sangatya rendition that we heard. And we got a sense of how this knowledge is simultaneously intangible as well as embodied in a very intimate way. When we heard the first verse of the Arya Shatakam of Mukha Kavi, which was recited by Sri Lalita ji, learned from Raghavendra ji's mother, who herself learned from her grandmother. So this yatis across generations being so nimbly crossed, and the yati between theory and practice being nimbly crossed was so enriching for us in this talk. And in the survey, we were introduced, as it were, to a gallery of meters, like friends being introduced by a common friend. We have versatile Vasanta Tilaka, melancholy Mandakranta, peaky Shikarani, sublime Shardula Vikreditam, universal Upajati, and all-round Anushtup. And the several themes which were for which the tone was set in this talk, which other speakers have also built on, which is how language and meter seem to choose each other, and how they can bring out the best in each other by making certain vocabulary come to the forefront, and the natural rhythms being given their utterance, etc. Something which was really helpful to students as well as those who are immersed in this world of Sahitya is that Sri Lalita ji and Raghavendra ji have, for every meter illustrated, provided examples from the Kavya Prapancha, from the glorious Kavya corpus for us to dig into. So this, again, there is this cross of a yati from which separates beginners from what looks like very classical poetry. When we come to GS's Murthyji's talk, and also the talk we heard from Shashi Kiran ji, it was immensely educational for us in seeing. We learned about Chandas, we also learned about how an Indian Shastra blossoms and how it flourishes in a living tradition, thriving tradition of scholarship to this very day without sacrificing any rigor. From Murthyji, we heard of several analogies which will appeal to someone from a scientific background. Chandas as a filter, which passes what we need and mostly rejects what we don't. We heard of Chanda. We heard of this adjacency matrix, neighbors of the first half of phrase and the second half of a phrase, as a kind of sieve or chalni, as we call it in Hindi. We learned about Tala and Laya being cast as periodicity, Tala as periodicity, Laya as pauses within a period. And throughout this very rigorous and mathematically grounded treatment, there was always an eye on aesthetics and a acknowledgement that there are big questions which await us, which are as relevant today as they were in the days of Pingala and Kedara Bhatta. What is the magic of the number 8 in the syllables of Anushtup? What is a rhythm? What makes a meter rhythmic? And these questions were not just raised in an open-ended way, but we were given a toolbox, as it were, for creating new meters. And this is not just about making random strings of Lagu and Guru and flying and wondering which one sounds pleasant. So he has given us a recipe for creating meters in a top-down way, mindful of these adjacency matrices. And it's inspirational for people both working in research and also development of new meters. Will have a lot to learn from and take forward from this talk. From Shashi Kiranji, we had this dose of inspiration from the biography of Sediapu Krishna Bhatta, how he crossed his own yati from working from this barrier of visual impairment, making contributions that totally span the ages. We could also place in context, thanks to Shashi Kiranji, the thriving of Chandas Shastra in this way. We had a time when Lakshana or definitions or theorizing would run to catch up with the Lakshya or the examples, and how both these descriptive and prescriptive, neither of these descriptive or prescriptive elements were ignored by people studying Chandas. And also there is the way forward for many present-day researchers. If we want an Aitihasika analysis, we now have the resources to go back and check what might be the first known use of a certain meter. A Ganitiya Adhyayana, where statistics of use of poets preferring certain meters or not, the tools have come in hand waiting for us to use them. Finally, the emphasis, of course, was on Chandas Saundarya Mimamsa. Beauty, the quest for beauty. There is truth and goodness, but beauty of Chandas is what we have been celebrating throughout today. And how the celebration of the unison of Chandas and Sangeeta, which have been declared Samana Tantras by Sediapu. We have lovely definitions which help both composers who are hobbyists as well as more mature ones, and also those who are approaching this scientifically, about the notions of yati and yati bhanga. Of yati is where two gatis meet. I'm tempted to use the English word gate, G-A-I-T, for gati, and how two of them meeting constitute this natural division. And how Yati Bhanga, as characterized by Sediapu Krishna Bhatta, is about the gate of a meter and a gate of a language somehow not being in harmony. And this notion of language and meter in tandem ties back to what Srilita ji and Raghavendra ji have been telling us from the beginning itself. So we came to Dr. Shankar Rajaramanji, and we could hear firsthand why Chitrakavya is not just picture poetry, it is wonder poetry. And the wondrousness was on display for all of us. We had heard earlier from G.S.S. Murthy and others about how one meter relates to another. And here we saw meters in close embrace, emerging from within each other, and that was astounding to see. Besides being an art form, going back to the notion of Chandas as Shastra and the whole spirit of Indian knowledge systems, some key words here were Samarasya and Upaya. So Samarasya between any rule conflict between the demands of Chitrakavya and the demands of Chandas, and how this was done with such artistry. And Upaya, which is an expedient means without breaking the other rules. It is expedient, it is clever, it is jaw-dropping for us to see, but again, within the strictures of Chandas and Chitrakavya. And even at something that seems to be in the cutting edge of poetry composition, to use a modern phrase, we found that some very fundamental principles lying from deep antiquity were what come to the rescue of the poet. Samyuktaksharas, the rule which G.S.S. Murthy found so remarkable, that a letter, that an akshara that is preceded by a compound, that is succeeded or followed by a Samyuktakshara compound, is treated as guru, which is a remarkable rule, is what comes to the rescue of the Samarasya attempted by, comes to the rescue of Chitrakavis attempting Samarasya, like Dr. Shankar. Anushtup, one of the oldest, most common meters, is also the biggest friend of the Chitrakavi, who, while attempting various new bandhas, capping this feast, we started on a musical note with Sri Lalita ji singing, and we ended with such a glorious assortment, multiple meters, multiple languages, and rendered musically. We had this theme of jumping across yatis nimbly, and here we jumped across the yati which people imagine between Samskrita and Prakrita. We had Gaha Satasai. We heard from the Sangam poets, and we heard from the Tirupavai. So when it comes to Tamil, languages that have been called ancient and languages that we speak on an everyday basis. We heard in Hindi, Sanketi, Kannada, of course, and English as well, from a variety of sources. The sheer variety of sources that were cited, we had Mankutemmana Kagga, we had Kabir's Dohas, Gaha Satasai, and Sangam poetry, as I mentioned. Film music as well. So this, I can't think of a more fitting tribute to the idea that Chandas has been representing the cadences of Indic thought itself. There are gates of language, there are gates of meter, but our thought itself, dancing in joy, was demonstrated by Shrikantji. We get to hear more on all of this from Dr. Nagaraj Paturiji, Chief Curator of INDICA. I take this opportunity to thank all speakers for this wonderful presentation, this string of gems that we got to witness today. Thanks so much.